Hello, this is Capes, Cows, and Crusaders. I'm Kat, joined by Ernesto. How's it going?
Pretty good. Just got back from the gym.
Hmm.
Yeah, right next to the insane asylum. But what can you do?
Yeah. Or the old asylum down near Bodega Bay that's now a Buddhist church, apparently.
Yeah, well, religion is depends on who's running it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, hello, chat. Hope you guys are doing good.
Yep, hopefully people show up. They probably should show up soon. I did promote it.
Oh yes, they will. They always do. They know what's up. And if they don't, they'll have a lovely surprise waiting for them in the YouTube sphere or wherever they get their podcast.
Yes.
How's your day been in general? Like got any comics, read any new volumes lately?
No, not yet, lately. No.
Anything you got your eye on for the moment?
Nah, not for new acquisitions. No.
No. Are you planning on getting the sequel to Long Halloween coming out this month, or are you gonna wait for that?
I'll just wait till it's in a collected paperback, because the prologue edition is already, or the prologue issues are already sold out, um, and it's like, well, I'd want the whole thing or the whole story.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah,
It's kind of weird they just call it issue 0. It's like, well, technically it's issue 1, but
I
okay.
mean, yeah, technically, but in their eyes, it's more of a marketing strategy. I mean, technically, it's issue one, but we're calling it zero just so that we can make issue one special because nobody cares about issue zero.
Yeah,
And I know this because anytime there's a new number one issue, that is the one you pay attention to. Everything else is as is.
yeah.
It's been a while since I've gotten a comic, but you
Hmm.
wouldn't believe the depths I had to get Batman number one from the New 52 back in the day. I think I paid almost $100 for that issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. So we have episode 4 of The Penguin, which Pro- excuse me if I mispronounce it. I believe is Centani,
Yes.
the title, which I know it's what Italian for something, or is it French for something? I have no idea.
Italian.
Italian. I didn't do my due diligence. Do we know what it means?
No, but I will look right now so we give people time to show up.
Of course.
Let's see. Centani, I think it's called, with the,
Yeah, CENT apostrophe A double NI.
yeah. It's the Italian to English. Yeah, I don't care. Okay, here we go. 100 years.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
Okay, I can see it.
I mean, I guess 100 years. That's I mean,
I think it's I just popped it up here. Apparently it's a phrase that I guess for the purposes of this episode, which we'll get into pretty soon, it can be used as may you live 100 years. It's kind of like a toast thing where you wish somebody a long life and good health, which again, to this episode, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense considering everything that went down in this episode. Episode 4, by the way, which it's funny, like I don't want to dive into it right now until we got a crowd, but goddamn, it's like we just had this conversation before we wrapped up episode 3 last time, and here comes episode 4 and just brute force itself in and just does everything I was anticipating and more.
mm,
Yeah. There's a lot of cameos here that for a comic book nerd I like. There's one cameo that I didn't recognize until I looked them up, and I kind of wanted to slap myself for not recognizing the name. But considering the origins of that character, which we'll get into soon, I was like, oh, of course I couldn't remember it, because the origin of this character wasn't ever in the comics. I mean, they did go to the comics at some point, but it was not born from the comics. It was born through another medium, which is not untraditional when it comes to comic books in general. Like, most characters that are created specifically for a specific medium do end up going into the comics at some point. I think a great example, and if I'm allowed to go to the other competition for a moment, I know that Marvel, when they released, that's not even a word. When they released Thor Ragnarok, that was our introduction to Valkyrie. And the Valkyrie from the comics is completely different for Valkyrie in the movies, because in the movies it's portrayed by Tessa Thompson, and in the comic book she is practically Brunhilde. She's tall, blonde, and can kick your ass. Not to say that Tessa Thompson portrayal doesn't kick ass. I'm just saying completely different. And you would have showed me in a lineup who is Valkyrie, I'm going to point to the one that's not Tessa Thompson. But that character did end up making its way into the comic books, and it kind of sparked a controversy. I don't know who made the article, if it was IGN or one of the comic book specific nerd sites, that was kind of having an issue with how Marvel was using its comic book lore versus what the MCU was doing. Whenever the MCU made a change through the adaptation for their movies, somehow that change was supposed to be company-wide. So with the example that I mentioned with Tessa Thompson, all of a sudden the Valkyrie that people were mainly familiar with in the comics would need to either take a step back, or she would be retired. And by retired, I mean she just goes away on an adventure, and then Tessa Thompson's version of Valkyrie takes over, and then she comes with her origins as if it belongs to the original character, which is like kind of a disservice to the character in the comics. It's just like, I mean, it's the same character, but because you want to promote Tessa Thompson's version, you are literally just flicking off a character that people have been reading for a while just to make room for the new shiny toy that you're making the assumption people are going to buy comics because you put them in there. And the same thing happened again with Shuri when Wakanda Forever came out. The origin of Shuri in the comics is way different than the origin of hers in the movies, or how she becomes the Black Panther, etc. So they decided to overhaul her backstory in the comics to match the movie, which again is like, why? The whole point of an adaptation is that you're taking a character from the comics and making your own spin. Why are we connecting the two? It doesn't make sense. I just wanted to throw that out there because we are going to talk about it at some point. Also, we're babbling and having a little banter because it's our show and we can do what the hell we want.
Yes.
And by that, I mean we're renting the digital space for the moment.
Yeah. So this episode, I think, is the first setback in the series. It really killed the momentum that the show had, creates logic issues, and frankly does things I'm just not buying that doesn't tie with other characters. But, well, here we go. It starts where we ended the last episode, and Nadia Maroney has pulled Penguin and Sophia aside, and she's holding him at gunpoint, and she reveals to Sophia that Oz killed Alberto, and Alberto's like, Oz is like denying it, and he's like, oh, I was just, getting the drugs here so we could get our foot in the door, and I was going to hand over the operation to you. And Sophia's just watching him and realizing that the same things he's saying to Nadia is the same stuff he would say to her, and that he really is just not trustworthy at all. So that's why Penguin abandons her and jumps in the car with Vic, and they drive off to episode 5, I guess, because we don't see them.
Yeah, that's true, because if you haven't noticed, I decided to change my profile picture and name for this specific review because this episode is 98% the Hangman and 2% Flying Rat.
Yes. And so Penguin takes off, And then we go into, and then she, Nadia decides after, her guy got run over that she's not even going to kill Sophia or kidnap her or anything. She just decides we got to get the hell out of here. So they jump in their SUV and take off. And Sophia decides to call Julian for help, Dr. Julian Rush.
Yes, the very miscast Dr. Julian Rush.
Yeah. This then bleeds into a flashback set like 10 years earlier.
Ooh, I see what you did there.
Yes. And then they're at a charity event where she's trying to, raise money and donations for mental health because her mom hanged herself apparently. And she's like, oh, this cause is near and dear, the usual gala with everybody there. Like Bruce Wayne says, to make it look like they're making a difference just because they want to be seen. And as she's leaving, she gets pulled aside by this reporter who wants to talk to her about it, and she just brushes her off. She's like, I don't want to hear it. And she leaves with Oz in the car, and this back then he's her driver, and she has a pretty good relationship with him. And we find out that night from her just kind of having flashbacks of it when she was a little girl walking into the master bedroom and finding her mom hanging from a noose in the bedroom with all these defensive wounds on her hands. And Carmine walks in this iteration played by Mark Strong in the flashbacks, and he tries to pulls her aside, telling her that, you weren't supposed to see that or whatever. And you see that he's got little injuries on his hand too, so we can kind of see what happened. He basically killed her and staged it to look like a suicide. But she's kind of, still thinking about it. And so when she gets a call again from that reporter, she decides this time she's going to go see her. And she has Oz drive her to this seedy alley where they have a rendezvous. And apparently we find out that all of the Hangman's victims are, where they worked in the 44 below. And I thought, okay, that's a bit of a stretch. And that's the first hiccup the show has because it's already a given what they're going to do. And she's like, look, they all suffered from these photos. You could tell it's like manual strangulation. They weren't hanged, so there's apparently no hangman. And she doesn't really want to hear it. She's like, what do you think I'm going to do? Just, push some conspiracy theory against my family? Forget it. Of course, she knows she's onto something, but Sophia doesn't want to admit it, so she just brushes it off and gets back in the car to leave. And at her father's birthday party, where she's going to surprise him with some birthday gift of some kind, she's pulled aside by Johnny V, who says, your dad wants to talk to you. So she goes in the back room to see what he wants, and he reveals that, hey, Oz told me that you talked to a reporter. And she's like, well, I just wanted to see what the hell she was nosing her business around. I told her to fuck off. But he's not buying it, and he's upset because he was really impressed by her and wanted to name her the new head of the family whenever he was going to step down. And she's like, what? I just told the guy to fuck off. It's not really a big deal. And he's just kind of getting all worked up about it because he's like, I can't afford an investigation into me for murder and that kind of stuff. And so from there, she leaves the party, gets in the car with Oz driving her. She scolds him pretty badly. It's like, why the fuck did you tell him that? And he's like, well, I was doing my job. He pays me. She's like, no, you should have come to me about that, not gone to him. Of course, Penguin's being feisty because he's trying to, secure his own position and get rid of her. And so they get pulled over while they're driving home, and we see it's Kenzie, the crooked cop from the movie who helped break the case open. And he takes Sophia and arrests her for the murders, including the reporter who's apparently now been murdered. And she's taken to jail and told she's going to be moved to Arkham Asylum for 6-month observation, a pending trial. And that she's not allowed to have any visitors during that time. And so she goes to Arkham, gets processed, and all of these sworn statements have been signed by the Falcone family saying she's mentally ill, just like her mother. So they've basically all conspired to get rid of her as a way for Carmine to get rid of the Hangman investigation. And this is where I kind of already stopped because it's like, there's no way he killed all those people in the club. It's like he killed Annika in the first one because she knew bombshell information. He almost killed Selena because she was trying to shoot him first. What the hell is going on in the club that he's killing not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 7 other employees? that are just the waitresses. I was like, I don't buy that at all, because he's not a lunatic who snaps. He's not crazy. He's a gangster. It's like I didn't buy that was something that was going on in the 44 Below, and it felt really contrived. And so that and then they'd get around explaining the logistics of it as to how she did it, because it's like, well, how exactly did you do that? Because I guess nobody decided to ask any questions about the logic behind it, because there really is none. So I was already not really on board with this idea, and I think it makes her incredibly less intimidating, because, oh, you're not their lunatic hangman. Okay, that's kind of boring, but okay. So she's in Arkham, and what's the other doctor's name? Did they name him?
They did. Give me one second.
It's not Vinestra, was it? He was the guy in charge.
No.
Or Shaw.
Keep going. I'll let you know.
All right, so they decide to keep her there, and they're trying to bait her as if she's crazy. One day she's inside the mess hall, and for some reason one of the inmates there isn't chained and just beats the shit out of Sophia, trying to coax her to fight back, but she doesn't. And Julian comes to see her in her cell, and she could tell that he's baiting her into sounding crazy and paranoid. And she's like, what? She was unchained, and obviously somebody set that up. And it's like, oh, don't use my words against me. You're trying to make me sound crazy for your report. But then they decide to take her for electroshock therapy, which they do multiple times as a justification to treat her, supposed insanity. While she's there, she meets another character, an obscure character from the comics, Magpie, who's kind of like, in the comics, she's like a kleptomaniac that steals shiny things. And this one, she's just a complete weirdo. It was in the neighboring cell, and one of the screws is missing, so you could peer inside like a peephole and see her. And
it's Dr. Ventress. He's the one in charge of the program that they're running.
Oh, it is Dr. Ventress. Okay, so one day she's at lunch and she just decides to murder Magpie, because Magpie just annoys her as one of those annoying hangers-on that never shuts up. And she beats her to death and kills her. She's like, see, I told you I'm not crazy. This is what I have to do to prove to you that I'm not crazy, is killing this person. And so then they subject her to more electroshock therapy. This goes on, rinse, dry, and repeat for a while before Alberto's finally allowed to see her at the end of the 6 months. And he says that Dr. Ventress has had her declared too mentally incompetent to stand trial. So they're going to skip the trial entirely. She'll just be a lifer at Arkham. And Alberto, you could tell, is really desperate to try and help her, but he doesn't really know what to do. And so there's nothing that he can do. And she's just kind of stuck to rot in Arkham. And she tries to convince Alberto that this was, a family conspiracy, but there's really nothing he could do. And so he takes off, presumably to go back to Italy. We then jump ahead back to the present, and she's with Julian at his house. And she's kind of getting in his face about how, oh, you enjoyed that, didn't you, being a sadist and trying to make me seem crazy and all of that. And he's like, no. And you could tell he feels guilty about what happened. Like he's trying to buy back his, lessen his guilt or something like that. But she's not really a huge fan of it. And so she eventually leaves him, being rather upset, goes back to the Falcone estate. And there's a big family dinner, and Luca's trying to give this speech as she interrupts to basically say that, I'm not really the hangman. And she gestures to Milo, who's the bodyguard played by James Madio. She's like, Milo here's got a bigger body count than me. And they're like, oh, Sophia, you shouldn't be saying that. And she's all getting in their face about it because she knows that they all signed these affidavits saying she was insane, including her cousin Carla, who's the one from the earlier episode who wanted to, oh, let's go to Lake Como like we did when we were teenagers. That girl who wouldn't let her near her daughter.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we're going to have dessert and it'd be great. But then Carla doesn't want her daughter in there to hear any more of this, so she takes her out to go to bed. And Sophia just makes it clear that she's, got them all on her shit list. And so they all go to bed for the night.
Well, I mean, technically they've all been on her shit list since, forever.
Right, but so they all go to bed, and she gets up and decides to take her cousin's daughter out to the greenhouse to go to take a nap out there, and she's like, it's like, Mommy says you crazy, did bad things. She's like, Well, I did. My father locked me in a dungeon with all the monsters, and I had to fight off all the monsters in order to live. She said, "Don't worry, just go to sleep. It'll be fun, like a little camp out." So they're sleeping in the greenhouse, and then the next morning when Sophia wakes up, she grabs a gas mask from the greenhouse, wearing this beautiful yellow dress, and she goes into the house, and we see that everybody is dead from, I guess, monoxide poisoning. So she goes into the basement and refigures the furnace and starts walking through the house, opening all the windows. We see that Luca's dead. Milos is dead. You know, all and the Carla and her husband are dead, and the grandfather's dead. All these people are dead. For some reason, it didn't kill Johnny Vitti. I'm not sure why not, but she goes up there and wakes him up and says, "You know, you're coming with me," and marches him out. And it's like, oh, she just killed everybody in the house, and that's how the episode ends.
Yes.
Oh, and we have our first viewer, DJ Play Nice. Hey, how's it going?
Oh yes, our first sign of life.
Yes, thanks to yeah, thank you, DJ Play Nice. So a lot of this episode is spent in Arkham, and it's pretty visceral in the way it portrays everything like being processed and how crazy everybody is. But I had a lot of problems with this. First of all,
okay.
The reason I didn't think there was anything weird about her being around the Falcone estate when she got let out was because, assuming she was the hangman and that she killed these other women, well, they don't fall into her victim type. So they look at her sideways like she's crazy, but oh, she's family and we have to keep her around, but they'd have nothing to worry about. Well, now the revelation that not only do they know she's innocent, but that they all forged all these, told all these lies. It makes no sense that they've been just have their guard down the entire time with her walking around the house these last few episodes. It's like, don't they know she wants to kill him or has every reason to want to kill them? Like that didn't make sense to me. How they were just kind of, quasi nonchalant. It's like, yeah, they think she's weird, but it's like, if you screwed her over like this, why are you letting her? Why are you not disappearing her? It's like, why are you just letting her walk around like with your backs turned to her? Like that didn't really. I'm like, did they think she's stupid and isn't going to remember? I mean, that didn't make sense to me at all.
So I wouldn't call this an issue, more like one of those red flags, I would call it, because it's not really a problem. It's just that as I'm watching the episode, I'm watching it, I haven't had like that first, wait, this doesn't make sense moment. My moment was at the dinner table where she's having that speech. And the moment she mentioned that Milo has a bigger body count, I'm like, I had to like do like a mental pause. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This is a crime family. Why are they giving her shit for killing people? Even if she was the hangman, wouldn't it be like, hey, okay, you had your fun, now calm down. We can't have you do killing people. I mean, I've killed people, but I have a reason for killing people. You're just doing it for the funs. Like, I thought, because at that point, I'm just like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, it makes sense for the other people who are acquainted with the family to be wary of her, because I'm like, well, I don't want to be another victim because of her. But if the family knows, it's like, well, this family is built on blood, deceit, and corruption. So having one family member killing people, whether it's in the way of a serial killer or for whatever reason she had, shouldn't really be that big of an issue. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, maybe I would have to ask a crime family straight up to their face, hey, if your family member is killing people for glee, but you're killing people because you're trying to gain territory and power, where's the line?
Right. But now that we know that isn't what they had against her,
now that we know, it's like, okay, well, y'all are a bunch of hypocrites, but fine. Something they could have done here, and I'm thinking about it right now as you were breaking it down, especially when you're like just discussing that it doesn't make sense of why Carmine Falcone was the one killing all these girls at
at
the underground
44 below.
40 below. Because I have to believe, and this is just me getting into like a fly on the wall in the room where the writers were coming up with this subplot. I think that because in the movie, when Carmine kills Annika, and when he tries to do the same thing with Selena Kyle, I think they took it and ran with it. Decided to make it into like, for this interpretation of Carmine, into one of his sins, and they just ran with it. And they wanted to use it as okay, well, let's take the hangman from the comics. Let's take the the strangulation from the movie, but let's make something with it. Like, let's not just follow the comics and make her the hangman, persona altogether. Like, I think that's where the thought process went in, because I'm like, for everything that Carmine has done, and you've read it in the comics and you've seen the adaptations, this is one of those things where I'm just like, I don't think Carmine would stoop to this. Like, yeah, he'll kill someone. I'm not disclaiming that. Just this, it's like, nah, he wouldn't do this.
And Maria Kyle's name was not one of the 7 either.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where I'm just like, okay, well, like, again, I wasn't off put by it. I wasn't really, hating on that. I was just like, okay, this doesn't jive, but fine. You're doing it. Go for it.
Well, it's like when she has that line, "Oh, I've been tired of being talked down to by men and all that." I'm like, oh, you're trying to turn it into one of those stories.
Yeah, it was one of those. I'm just like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, it's like I didn't like that they were doing that. Oh, hey, Pleasant Valley Picker, how's it going?
Oh, before I forget, hello, Lemon Pie. I saw your comment.
Yes,
but
hello, Lemon Pie. Hey, everybody.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like, okay, you're gonna tell one of those stories, but she's not as intimidating anymore, because now we realize that the reason she's acting crazy isn't that she is crazy. She's just acting that way as a way to mock the people who put her away. And so, oh, you're not really that scary then, because you're not really crazy. And yeah, she killed that teenager in the first episode because she was trying to get to Oz. And yeah, she stole Falcone. She does not care about killing people. But
although I think with this episode, since you and I discussed at the end of our last review that if we're going to get the Mark Strong character as Carmine Falcone for the TV adaptation, or the spinoff, that means we're going to get a flashback episode, which means we might get a flashback episode of her in Gotham. And sure enough, this episode, we get both.
We also didn't get an explanation in this episode as to why she was let out of Arkham, considering that we found out that they didn't go the traditional route of, once you are declared mentally competent enough to stand trial, well, then you go to trial. Well, that didn't even happen. They just skip it and then say, oh, she's in Arkham for 10 years, and then for some reason she gets let out, which they haven't really revealed. So
I might have an idea, but we'll theorize it later. I wanted to bring up some stuff in all that summary, if you'll allow me.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I wanted to bring up is Sophia herself. There is a moment where, what? You ordered pizza, you son of a bitch.
From Pizza Hut. Sigh, Life of a Lazy Bachelor. Oh, we're all in there.
Oh,
we're all with you there, PvP.
Hey, I'm a homeowner and I'm still a lazy bachelor, so good on you.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, sort of, except I'm not a homer.
But you are in a home.
Yes.
And you own your collection behind you. So, I mean, you can split the two and just put a bracket right there.
Yeah.
But there's a moment where Sophia's about to snap in the episode, which you mentioned with Margaret Pye. And I paused it because I needed to get something to drink. And I paused it at the right time where Melody's eyes are bugging out of her skull, and they're like really crazy eyes because she's trying to sell it that she's snapping. And I paused it in such a way that it's like a profile. And I started laughing at the TV screen because I'm like, wow, of all the images for me to pause, I paused it at the moment where her eyes are about to get googly and insane. And she reminded me of one of those creepypasta fan internet creations. You ever heard of the Momo character? Yeah. So she looked like Momo in that image. And I'm like, oh God, she looks like Momo. And it's been a while since I remembered Momo. I remember the face, not the name. I had to look it up. And I regret it because the moment I pulled it, I'm just like, oh, it's Momo. God damn it.
Pleasant Valley Picker asks, I hear Penguin is good. Am I hallucinating? No, you're not. It's a very good show.
Very good show. But this is going to be the most scrutinized episode so far.
Yes. Says, are they being faithful to the Batman mythos?
Well, I'll let you answer that and I'll retort.
Well, they're kind of, as usual with a lot of comics putting their own interpretation on it. This one being about the expansion of the Falcone family, and we're learning how Penguin is basically rising from being Sophia's driver to eventually being the head of the Iceberg Lounge to where he is now, trying to play them and the Maronis against each other in order to gain power. And Sophia, of course, is famous from the comics as being the Hangman, and everybody thinks she's the Hangman, has just been released from prison. But we found out that her father was actually there really was no hangman. It was just her dad killing the other employees of the Iceberg Lounge, and I guess a crusading reporter thinking it looked strange, and I guess the media just painted her as the hangman when he decided to frame her and send her to trial because he needed to get the murder accusations going away, and he didn't like that she talked to a reporter, even though she didn't tell her anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in a sense.
I want to say it's faithful, as in it takes the roots of all these characters, but it does do its own spin. This is a very, very, if you've gone from the first episode, especially with Alberto, it is a very, very different interpretation. But it does come from the origins of the Carmine Falcone family.
Yes, and this one picks up. The series begins 1 week after the events of the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, and it starts with Penguin doing one impulsive act, which he immediately regrets, and it's sort of like the ripple effect of how is he going to get away with this and not and get caught, and turning everybody against each other. But it's a very good so far. This week's episode was mostly flashback and stuck with Sophia, so we didn't really get to see Penguin at all. As I joked at the beginning, Penguin drove off into episode 5 because we didn't see him.
Like you said, he drove off, and we'll see him driving into episode 5.
Yes.
And it's one of those episodes where it starts, I'm like, oh, okay, Sophia's up learning everything that's going on. She's learning that she's been played for a fool. So now now that you know that, even though this episode was, like I said, 98% Sophia Falcone, who knows what's going to happen in the next 4 episodes, because damn, now he's really going to have to figure out what to do, because, and mind you, like we said, Penguin left. This is all Sophia, so he doesn't know what's happening in this episode.
Right.
When it takes place in the present. He'll find out later. How we're going to find out later, we don't know, because this ends in a cliffhanger almost, just like the previous episode.
PvP says, big Batman fan when they get it right. He says the show sounds interesting, and that he will add it to his list, number 2,330. I know what you mean.
How many TLC shows are you watching?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, with this episode, I didn't feel they put as much thought into the right. Like the first 3 episodes, there's reasons for things happening. Everything ties together logically. A lot of sharp writing. This one, again, it felt like, let's have it be, I'm tired of men doing that. And I was like, let's have it be one of those episodes. Yeah. And again, now that we know she's not really crazy, she's just doing that to mock the people who said she was crazy. And almost like she's trying to trick them into thinking that. Well, it's almost not as intimidating, because she's just, it's like, it's just an act. You're just still a mobster, basically.
Yeah.
She's a normal person.
She's still a Falcone.
Yeah. And I just kind of, it's like, I didn't buy that. It's like, what could all these other girls be doing in the Iceberg Lounge to piss off Falcone that much? I mean, Maria was killed because she had a kid and Falcone was the father, and she wanted him to step up and do something. He didn't want to do it, and so he killed her. Yeah. And again, Annika knew that bombshell information about the mayor of the renewal property, so he had to go. And Selena, actually, it took Selena shooting at him because he seemed to like her and because he knows, he doesn't know that Selena was the daughter. He kind of forgot that, but he clearly took a liking to her enough. But I mean, the point is that it takes quite a bit for him to kill you. So to randomly kill 7 other employees, and I'm guessing from what the reporter said that it happened within a not too long of a time span. It's like, okay, and then we know he killed his wife, so who knows if we're ever going to learn what that was about. But he obviously was nurturing Sophia's charity because he wanted to nurture the idea that he didn't do it. Yeah. I thought that was a bit contrived writing for so far. But this is the only hiccup I've seen so far in the show.
Yeah, I've had that moment where she says, like, I spent all this time in my life being told what to do by powerful men. I'm just like, you were fine. Debatably, you were fine until you said those specific words. I'm like, okay, we're not doing this. No. Like, I get it. I get what they were going for, but I'm just like, okay, if you're going to do that, can you pick a character that I give less of a shit about for having, not that I'm not saying that I don't dislike the character that way. I'm just saying that I'm like, okay, you are not the character who needs that right now. Nobody's going to give you the hoorah rah for that. No, we're not doing this with you.
Yeah, especially since we've already seen her just kill that kid execution style.
Yeah, you killed that kid. This is not your platform.
Fuck off. You're not getting sympathy votes here. So that was
you try, but you're not gonna get it.
And then again, it's like, why did Johnny Vitti survive when everybody else died? I wasn't really clear about that.
So before we continue, just a few other tidbits from this episode. I went digging, and again, I'm not sure where they're pulling their comic book adaptation lore here. Like, I'm pretty sure they have access to the entire archive of all the characters that are tied to Gotham and Batman. But in this one, I'm like, okay, Dr. Ventress, I'm just looking to see because he's not really that prominent. He's only prominent because he's the one who's basically in charge of the experimentation with the drug that we saw in the previous episode, and it came from Arkham. So we see it here, even though it's not the focus, but it's clearly they're just doing a lot of psychological exams by pitting inmates together. Uh, Basically, they're doing a lot of illegal shit, and nobody is batting an eye because, again, this is pre-Batman Arkham Asylum. I'm not saying that Arkham Asylum is probably still not doing it. They probably still are. It just hasn't gotten Batman's attention. The thing is that this is 10 years, well, 8 years before Batman, because by year 8, that's when Batman makes his introduction. And then by year 2 is when the explosion happens. And then a week later, she's out.
Yeah.
But I looked into it for Dr. Ventress, and apparently there is a Floyd Ventress character whose alias is Mirror Man. And he was introduced back in 1954 in Detective Comics 213. He looks like a proto Hugo Strange if you look him up. And he is, an enemy who uses mirrors. He's not like Mirror Master from The Flash, but he's just a charlatan, parlor tricks in a situation. And then I kept going further. And Dr. Rush, I was trying to figure out his interpretation. I'm thinking, I've never heard of Dr. Rush. So I'm looking in. There is no Dr. Rush in the comics, but there is a person known as Rush. He was introduced back in 2011 during the New 52 in Green Arrow Volume 5, issue number 1. And he is your typical bad guy who's got superhuman strength, super stamina, and durability. And it's basically pitting Green Arrow with his arrows and his quiver versus people who are 10 times stronger than he is. So he has to be, clever to survive. So not the same character. So whatever they're doing with this character, I would like to say that it's just a coincidence. His name is Dr. Rush and has nothing to do with that character in general. So he's probably like a blank slate. The one that I mentioned earlier that I was surprised I couldn't recognize by the name, but I do recognize if you were to show me an image. And you and I reviewed this episode when it was a Victor Fries centric episode. Summer Gleason, she was introduced in Batman, the animated series by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini. She is the very lovely redhead who is always an ally to Batman and Robin in the series. And I was like, oh shit, it's her. Like I couldn't recognize her just in the name, but when I looked her up, I'm like, oh, that character. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh shit, that character. And considering they killed her off in this episode, I'm like, why? Why would you do that? But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, I guess there she went. And that's her first live action debut. And finally, you mentioned her, Magpie. And when she showed up, I'm like, because there's that scene where they introduce her. She's like her cellmate in a way, but on the other side. And she's able to talk to her because she unscrewed and left a hole where she can like talk to her through it. And that's where Sophia's kind of getting like a rundown of where she is and what's going to happen, what to expect. And she is already certifiable in this scene. And a lot of people would think, oh my God, is that Harley Quinn? No, that is not Harley Quinn. That is no, that is not Harley Quinn. But she does kind of have that Harley Quinn attitude, those traits. I guess it's one of those things where damn if you do, damn if you don't. But yes, it is the character of Magpie. She was introduced in The Man of Steel #3 back in 1986. Her alter ego is Margaret Pye. And as you mentioned, she was pretty much a klepto. She would steal things and replace them with cheap imitations, but she always went after, shiny objects in a way. And she was mainly just one of those jewel thieves that was very good at fighting. And it wasn't until later, as the years went by and they wanted to reinvent her, that they gave her nails that extended at will, and it was like a biological situation. She's kind of like, uh, that character from X2, X-Men United? She had all her fingers were adamantine claws. Imagine that, but they're just sharp nails.
Mm.
I remember the last time I saw her on TV was in the animated series Beware the Batman, the 3D show that only lasted one season because not enough toys were being bought.
Mm.
And in that episode, she's like, "Ooh, shiny, shiny." She always went for shiny things. And unless I'm mistaken, in that episode, she wanted to steal Batman's utility belt because it had all those lovely toys, and she wanted to know where she got those lovely toys. And then the last time before then that I remembered the character, it was in the animated movie Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, where they're being chased by Lex Luthor and his cabinet, and he enlists Metallo, and a lot of the heroes were after them because Lex Luthor was the president of the United States at this point. And Superman is, injured because he got shot with kryptonite, and then Batman has to drag him through the sewers back to Wayne Manor because he knows the sewer system there. And they have a bonding moment. It's one of my favorite Batman Superman's bromance moments, where Superman asks Batman, "Hey, whatever happened to Magpie?" Bruce tells him, "She died." "Really? Why is it always that the good villains have to die?" And Batman's like, "Clark, what is a good villain?" And I remember that joke. I'm like, "Oh no, that makes sense. Those are villains that they just, they do petty shit. They're not evil like the Joker or anybody else." So yeah, it makes sense what a good villain is. And God damn it, Magpie gets no respect. She's been killed so many times, and in this episode, it's like adding insult to injury. The other live action adaptations of her is in the Arrowverse series, Batwoman, that came out and got canceled. She was there, and then she got killed off. And then she was apparently portrayed in the Gotham show that nobody watched by that. I forget her name, but she was the main lead actress in the MTV adaptation of Teen Wolf. And yeah, that is the storied history of Magpie from the comics to live action. And her last appearance in the comics was after DC Rebirth, where she is put on the Suicide Squad and she gets killed off.
Interesting. PvP says, by the way, happy Canadian Thanksgiving, even though I'm having pizza.
So happy Monday.
Yes. Lemon Pie says, I had pizza tonight too from Domino's. I had a burger from In-N-Out. PvP says, I have so much to watch at the age where I may run out of years before all the shows. Right?
Or we just need another pandemic for you to catch up.
Yeah. He says, I feel sorry for youngsters that actually are curious about the previous decades and have so many decades to see to catch up. Every generation gets more difficult.
I mean, he did bring up a good point. These past 5 years have been a cacophony of TV shows left and right.
Mm. He says, when Jill and I agreed to watch all the British Avengers, Steed, and Emma Peel episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I was overjoyed to introduce those classics to a young person with curiosity.
Wow, deep cut.
Yep. And he's had a busy weekend, too tired to cook as it's back to work tomorrow. Oh, you never need an excuse to order pizza. It's never a bad idea to order pizza.
Never. Although I have a question to the man who ordered Domino's: flatbread, pan pizza, or New Yorker? I must know. So yeah, that was my diatribe into like the Easter eggs in this episode. I read an article that apparently Dr. Rush is secretly Hugo Strange, and I am hoping that is not the case because I will give this show a really bad reception review if it is. Because I'm like, if you're gonna use Hugo Strange, cast someone better, please.
Yeah, not him.
No, not this guy. No, again, I know I gave my misgivings to him earlier in these reviews, but of all the people you want to make Hugo Strange, not this guy.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go. I mean, they're doing something weird with this character. I don't know what it is, but I don't picture him.
He's got a crush on her. That's what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't. That doesn't seem like a Hugo Strange thing. So
yeah, Hugo Strange is obsessed with Hugo Strange.
Right, and he loves his job at Arkham.
Yes.
And so it's like if it was that easy to kill everybody this entire time, I wonder, like, why couldn't Oz have done that? Because I
Yeah,
imagine it's going to get played off in the press as being, a tragic accident,
yeah. But
Uh,
it does show really how much pull the Falcons had, because they had Summer Gleason killed from the Gotham Gazette. They were able to get the police to pick her up immediately after the party. I mean, they did it like, this is one of those things where I agree that there was some kind of sloppiness in the writing in this episode, because he didn't even give her a day, maybe 48 hours to think it over before he even took action. And it's one of those things I'm just like, wait a minute, why are you snapping so quickly? All she did was tell her to fuck off. Like,
well,
in
but
his
did Oz tell him that, though?
yeah, I know Oz told him, but
No, but I mean, Oz may have lied and said that, she was really talking to this
yeah,
woman.
and we don't know. We haven't seen that conversation. Maybe we'll get another episode where they show what he actually told her. Like, maybe he told him, yo boss, this is the 5th time I've had to take her to meet this woman.
Right.
If he would have said that, then okay, then that makes sense.
And Kenzie is the one who arrested her, so he's on the Falcone's payroll.
Yeah. And then, she didn't get her 6 months because he controls the court, he controls the whoever's already corrupt in the police. And I imagine he also controls corrupt reporters, because they ran that story like that. And I'm pretty sure people at the Gotham Gazette, especially her editor, would have known that she was doing this investigation. So again, if she was allowed to go that far into her investigation, then there were some people that were not on the payroll, but whoever ran the story that it was Sophia Falcone without any investigation whatsoever that Summer Gleason was doing, then there were some people at the Gazette that were already on the take.
Oh, for sure. PvP says, my best ever Halloween costume was the Joker from the 60s Batman show. I found red pants and green jacket at the thrift store, sprayed my hair green with white face, red lipstick, whole 9 yards.
But did you have a mustache under the makeup?
Cesar Romero would have been jealous. My cousin did that, except for the Nicholson Batman for Halloween in 1989, I think. Still got the pictures. It was pretty cool.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
that's funny. It reminds me of one of my close friends. He dressed up as the Joker for a Halloween party that we had at one of my friends' parties, and he painted his hair green. But when it came to but he came from a very strict religious upbringing. Like, he had some leeway, but there was some stuff that he wasn't allowed to do, and dressing up as the Joker was one of those, unfortunately. Like, I'm not saying it was a puritanical type of religious upbringing, but him dressing up as the Joker was like a big no-no. So he took off the makeup and everything came off, except he was having a hard time getting rid of the green dye that he put on his hair. So I wasn't there in person, but the way the story was told to me is that they had to take him to one of the 24-hour gyms back home. They walked in there with 2 bottles of shampoo, and they started using the entire 2 shampoo bottles, with one of his friends physically washing his hair for him. And they spent the next hour and a half in the showers at the gym trying to ensure that he got all the green dye out of his hair. And I'm listening to it, I'm like, I wish I would have been there. I would have been laughing my ass off throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, some people are really dainty in not being able to withstand that. God forbid he dyed his hair green.
Yeah, again, not I don't know the whole story of his upbringing. I just know that was one thing that I guess was a big no-no. Again, I'm not gonna make any more comments beyond that. The whole point is that I wish I would have been there, because the way they described it was that he was in his swimming trunks with his hands against the marble wall like a cellmate, and he's getting his hair washed by his classmate. I'm like, what the fuck happened that night?
When was this?
Oh, this was, I want to say 2008, 2009. This was high school.
90-minute shower, PvP said.
Yes, 90-minute shower. I shit you not. And they went through all the shampoo bottles so that they could make sure that whatever was there was gone. It's like somebody drawing a dick on your face with non-washable marker. You're gonna keep washing until it comes off.
PvP says he has pictures somewhere.
Sweet.
Hey, Matt G.
You can send it to the Fantasmagorium email chain. Do we have an email chain?
I don't think so.
We need to get an email chain. We need fan letters. We need fan pictures. We need fan everything.
Yes, we need fan everything for this.
Get on it, Scott. I know you're there. I know you're watching.
He's not.
So overall, let's call this the faux pas episode of the week.
Yeah.
After a nice 3-episode, haul. I'm pretty sure episode 5 will pick up. I hope, because now I'm like, okay, now I don't know where the fuck the show is gonna go.
Yeah, I could picture this episode being the one that I like skip if on a rewatch.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so she goes back home and kills everybody by messing with the furnace or whatever, and monoxide poisoning. Got it, and saves her cousin's kid. So
making me think of Midsummer for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Midsummer, the opening? Her parents are, but you don't know what's happening until it cuts through out of the bedroom and they're being poisoned in their sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Although this
people, it didn't even look like. It looked like some of them were just not even asleep. Like Milos was just lying on the floor and he was still in his suit and everything.
Yeah.
And Luca too, and it's like they would have probably sensed it.
Someone would have run down there and done something.
Somebody would have smelled it before then. So that's again a little more shaky,
Yeah, it makes sense. And the thing is that a lot of them, especially the people who were quote unquote sleeping, if you want to call it that, they had this like horrified look on their face. So I'm just like, okay, if you want to sell me on the idea that these people died in their sleep, let's go with that. That's the plan that they had. Then the way they are found dead does not match the intent.
Right. Plus, when you die,
because if I'm walking around in my jammies at my own house, and all of a sudden I'm starting to have a difficulty breathing or something, I'm getting the fuck out of there.
Right, and not to mention the monoxide poisoning, your face doesn't start contorting and all that kind of crap. It's So
like if the goal was that they're dying in their sleep, I would buy that if actually people were sleepy, but nobody was sleeping. And the guards, and I'm assuming there were guards because we see a lot of other people who aren't part of the family, someone would have been like, what the fuck is Kate? Open the fucking window, open the door.
Right.
I thought that she poisoned the staff, and then that's why nobody thought twice. But again, the way you find Luca and everybody else is like, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I appreciate what they were trying to do, but it's like I said, it's all in the execution, and this one is not the best.
Yeah, this one I thought was a new director as well for this one, Helen Shaver, different writer. So
it makes that line in the beginning about being told what to do by powerful men that much more evident.
Yeah, it's like, let's not put some thought into how this works. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
Same kind of crap we saw.
I'll say this though. For somebody who nearly got killed and looked like crap, one scene she does clean up well. And I kind of realized at that moment when she's walking around with the gas mask and she's doing it very gleefully, I'm just like, it was at that moment that I remembered just how physically imposing Sophia really is in the comics. She is like as tall, if not taller than Batman. That's how tall she is. And she looks like a bodybuilder almost, but she's also very feminine at the same time. You know who would have been not like the best actress choice, but you know who would have been a great choice for Sophia if you were to take out the whole controversy that happened a few years ago? Gina Carano would have been a great Sophia.
Maybe.
Like with the physical presence of what the character has, she would have been perfect, especially with how big she bulked up for The Mandalorian. She would have been perfect as Sophia. Just the image alone, I would have been sold on it. But because we're going with Melody and she's basically relying on her strengths in cleverness and not, strength in brawn, and which again, that's why I have this picture and I call myself La Dama Loca from Rata Alada Incorporated. So yeah, and I remember that I saw the animated adaptation that they did that they released last year, which was The Long Halloween, and I liked her portrayal in there. It's very different because she shows up in Dark Victory actor, which is where they followed up with the Hangman storyline.
Yeah.
And Dark Victory is where we have our introduction to Dick Grayson.
Hmm.
Or reintroduction, I should say.
PvP says, I used to go to cabin parties every summer in the late 70s and early 80s at a friend's cabin. We had one friend that drew on faces on us sleeping. He never got me, but I'm surprised we didn't drown him.
Well, it was the 70s and the 80s. You Carly could have gotten away with it.
Yep.
It would have made a good TV show. That one time we drowned our friend at summer camp. Because he drew his final dick. Reminds me of that stand-up special from Dave Chappelle where he talked about people drawing dicks on people's faces, but also about people putting carrots up people's ass. Yeah. Those are your real friends, people.
Now, I'm curious as to what Sophia is going to do with Johnny Vitti.
Not fuck him, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's like, why did you spare him, and what are you going to do? Are you going to try and pin this on him? I mean, I don't know. Because the Maroney's still have those photos, too.
Yeah, now this also presents one big problem for her, and I think for the show. Again, I'm just throwing this out there. We've had all this conversation and we've had all this debate about where's Batman. And assuming this is the whole family, I don't know if there are other family members that we're missing. If all these people, this is going to get reported one way or another. It's going to end up on the news that the whole Falcone family is gone. And the survivor is Sophia. And that's going to ask a lot of questions. Even though they are criminals, this still would perk up the Batman's attention. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it would.
Like a murder of that scale does not go unnoticed, even if it's people that Batman would normally beat up and put away behind bars. It's still happening in his city, and he wants to know who did that.
I also don't think he's out being Batman right now, though, because this is still just days after the flood. Like,
I don't think he's on a sabbatical.
Well, like that piece of promotional material that you sent me through Instagram there, the Gotham newspaper says, they have the signal on looking for Batman, and he hasn't been seen.
Oh, well, maybe. But again, this would draw his attention. This is not exactly something that he's going to ignore. Again, we don't see him, so we don't know. And the next time we're going to see him is, 2 years from now, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows how long Matt Reeves is going to take to get everything up and running, because he's taking his sweet time. Again, do whatever you need to do to get it nice and good to go, but seriously, put a firecracker up your ass and get this shit done. Like, I can't believe that throughout the whole writer's strike, he actually was not writing. Like, who the fuck does not write in the privacy of your own home? What the hell?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I didn't buy the excuse when he's like, oh, the writer's strike is probably like, no, it's not.
No. And even if the writer's strike was happening, there is no way you can tell me that James Gunn wasn't still writing his Superman script. He was writing.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you're not doing it in public doesn't mean you can't do it in private.
Yeah, it's 55 months between release dates for part 1 and part 2 if they stick to it.
Yeah, and don't get me started on how long it took for him to actually start filming.
Oh, yeah. If they start, he's like, oh, it sounded like they had a firm start date of April. Now he says, oh, I hope we start around then. It's like, what are you waiting on,
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it.
And here, we kept it under an hour.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah, an hour-ish. For those of us that joined late, we didn't really get started till almost about 10 minutes in because we were waiting for people to show up. So tell your friends and that kind of thing. Thanks for coming. PvP, always great to see you. DJ Play Nice, thanks for bumping the algorithm for us. You're always great at that. Matt G, nice to see you. Lemon Pie.
Matt G.
Lemon Pie, thanks for being here. And yeah, we had that was a good little turnout for us.
Yes.
Seems Lemon Pie may have left and not heard your question about what type of pizza he got from Domino's.
Damn it, Lemon Pie. You know what? For our next review, we're going to have to eat pizza.
We will.
We need to make it a pizza party then for episode 5.
Yes, a pizza party. All right.
All All right. Well,
Well,
thank you all for showing up. I hope you appreciate the banter at the beginning, and I hope you appreciated the little Easter eggs that I decided to break down for the cast and crew. We will be back for episode 5, whether that'll be the day after or on a Wednesday or Friday. I don't know. It's really going to be where the wind blows.
yes. So until next time, I'm Kat, joined by Ernesto, or Ludama Loca Rata Lata, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.